for its ruling today, validating the bonds for the Access Oklahoma Long Range Plan. And we want to emphasize again the 15-year long range plan, including the 3 routes to complete the Oklahoma City Outer Loop and relieve I-35 congestion, is now able to move forward. Emphasizing that we don't undertake these projects lightly. We understand the gravity of the impacts of the new routes to homeowners and businesses in the pathway, and we pledge, as we always have, to work diligently and with care with those impacted. We've talked extensively over the course of the months previous about process, and today's ruling is part of that process, and process is important in a 15-year long-range plan. There are several steps in the normal process now that will take place before any engineering work restarts, including returning to the Council of Bond Oversight for bond issuance approval. That will allow us to enter the bond market, and then resuming discussions with our federal, state, and local partners about the specifics of the projects. To be clear, we are at the very beginning stage of this long-range plan. Construction in the Norman area specifically likely will be several years away from today. However, we will assist them to the best of our ability with the information that we have available and continue to work diligently. And we encourage any property owners in the area that have questions to reach out to our 1-800 number. And again, we'll provide assistance as we're able. Additionally, to the many other communities that will benefit from the projects included in this plan, including new interchanges along the Turner Turnpike and other turnpikes that are part of the existing turnpike network, we want you to know that our work will be ongoing. We'll continue to work to improve access and safety along those existing routes, and certainly the widening of the Turner Turnpike between Kellyville and Oklahoma City is a premier project in the Access Oklahoma plan and desperately needed. Turnpike Authority's long-range plan has always been about the safety of Oklahoma's motorists. Oklahoma's motorists know firsthand the all-too-real safety concerns they face daily due to the congestion in the southern half of Oklahoma City metropolitan area, especially along southern I-35 corridor between Norman and the Texas state line. Providing options to motorists to have reliever routes is not a wish list item. It's a necessity to ensure the state's highway system continues to effectively and safely function as traffic volumes continue to increase, along with traffic accidents and, unfortunately, our fatality rates. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's mission is to interface seamlessly with the state highway system, thereby providing a choice for safe, convenient, and efficient passage in a user-funded transportation network. Our goal is to provide safe infrastructure while maintaining the lowest toll rate that we can for our customers. Again, we're very thankful for the Supreme Court's attention in their ruling in the validation case, and look forward to continuing progress on our 15-year long-range plan. Happy to take any questions that you might have at this time.
Secretary Gatz, I know that Access Oklahoma was paused back in April. Would today officially be, the first time the project is unpaused?
I would tell you that, when you're dealing with a project in a long-range plan like Access Oklahoma, restarting the engineering work will take months. So it's not something that's immediate. We still have, again, process is so important. We will have steps, including getting into the bond market to access the revenue streams that we're going to need to continue that work. That hasn't changed. We have to be able to get into the bond market. So again, this restart will take place over the coming months.
Supreme Court justices seem divided on what validation meant. Some felt like it was to include review of these routes. Others said that they weren't to get involved in reviewing routes. What's your take on what validation really means?
I believe that validation is a key and important part of the process, and I believe that the validation is really about the financing and the opinion of the financing for routes that are defined in statute. And we've always said that we believe the routes that were put forth are defined in statute. And again, the validation process is related to the validation of the bonds and the financing. And certainly we're respectful of the dissent and understanding that there are different opinions that exist. But at the end of the day, the validation proceeding itself is related to the issuance of bonds.
So, as far as you're concerned, the justices who prevailed in saying, no, this doesn't involve the routes at all, it's just about financing. You all provided financing information on how these bonds would be sold and how much they would be?
Again, it is a reflection of a consideration of the routes that are defined in statute, and that those routes are defined to the extent that it's okay to issue bonds on them.
Okay.
You mentioned that you were respectful of the dissent to this case, as evidenced by the legal case. There is quite a bit of scenes in the Cleveland County area. What do you say to those folks after this decision today? And what would you say to them now?
So, if I understood your question, let me repeat it right. So, the folks along the southern routes that are potentially impacted by Access Oklahoma, what would we say to them? Our message there has not changed. We'll continue to do everything that we can to work with property owners that are potentially impacted to make sure that they have the information available to them, that they're going to need to make good decisions, and we'll do everything we can to work with them. And that holds true today just as it did in the beginning.
Do you know how many property owners could be impacted? I know some have said 600, I've heard other numbers.
That number is going to be variable, and again, we've got a lot of engineering work left to be done, and we're going to restart that as quickly as we can, but it's going to take months to get going again. And really, until you have established right-of-way lines, you really don't have a true reflection of how many property owners may be affected. But we're going to continue to work diligently to put that information together.
And I know you said that it could take several years until construction actually begins on that south extension. So do property owners, is it safe for them to assume that they won't be removed from their properties or their homes for the next several years?
We'll work with property owners, and again, a lot of times you're going to have differing needs among the property owners. Some will want to stay as long as they can. Others may want to go ahead and move forward with a right-of-way transaction. We will try to accommodate everything that we can.
You'll be talking to Bureau of Land Reclamation about route and whether you can plan route or you have to move it west.
Absolutely. And again, when we talk about partners and stakeholders, certainly the Bureau of Reclamation as a federal stakeholder is an important part of that, and we will continue those discussions with them.
You've got contractors, engineering consultants here. Do you see them being able to start work soon, especially with the taxpayer lawsuit pending where they're also named, or do you see that having to wait until that lawsuit's resolved?
I think the proceeding, again, at the end of the day, is predicated on our ability to get in the bond market, to have the revenues to support those activities continuing. And that's really what I would characterize as a critical path. But we're going to be mindful of all litigation as we move forward.
Well, do you see the taxpayer lawsuit, or have attorneys told you that the taxpayer lawsuit can complicate going to the bond market?
Again, I think from a litigation standpoint, we have to be mindful of all ongoing proceedings.
So I'm hearing you say it's possible that the existing litigation could further delay it.
I can't speak specifically to that, other than to, again, reemphasize that there is still ongoing litigation, and we have to be mindful of that in all proceedings, and eventually we will find our way into the bond market.
Also, in the timeline you mentioned, that it won't start for several years, the last time we stood in press conference, you talked about that. But then when I was calling to clarify all that, after seeing the application to the Corps of Engineers, or I'm sorry, Bureau of Reclamation, it indicated from Poe and Associates a much faster start date for the toll roads around the has that circumstance changed?
And again, I don't know what you're specifically referencing when you talk about timeline, but I can tell you without hesitation that it will take years in the context of the long-range plan to get to the point where we're ready to do that kind of work in the Norman area.
So construction in the Norman area won't start for several years.
I can't see how it could.
Okay.
You mentioned some of those, the pending litigation. In terms of the investigative audit, will that affect anything with, the moving forward with bonds or anything like that?
We're attentive to the investigative audit also, and certainly it could have an impact, but I don't think we anticipate that at this point.
Have you heard if that investigative audit started?
We believe it is ongoing. I don't have any specific frame of reference for that, but we believe that the audit is ongoing.
Have they contacted you or your officials at the OTA about that?
We've provided information to the AG, yes.
Okay, so they did request and you all provided.
We have.
A lot of that engineering work and design work, your original goal was to have some of that completed by this past spring. Where were you at when you paused in April, and where will you have to go pick back up from? How far along were you, I guess, in that work?
I don't know that I've got a specific frame of reference, Joe. If you want to speak to that, it's going to be very general because, again, we have, if you look at the Access Oklahoma 15-year long-range plan, some projects are much further along in the design, especially on the existing routes. So if we've got an interchange to be constructed on the Turner Turnpike, if the widening projects have been ongoing, and the development of those projects, some of that development was well into engineering. So there are going to be various stages of completion, but all of it stopped with whenever we halted work. So, some of it will restart and move ahead faster than other phases. And I think we're going to, as we work through the coming months, we will get about the business of beginning to create more detailed scheduling, and we'll be able to talk much more extensively about what we believe realistic timeframes are for all of the projects.
I know a major concern with this project has been transparency, especially with some of, the homeowners who are affected by the southern extension. What would your comment be to them in terms of just how transparent things will be moving forward on where you're at and timelines and things like that with that extension?
The Turnpike Authority is now and has always been committed to transparency, and I think we have went through an incredible effort to make sure that we put every bit of information that we could out to the public so they can understand what Access Oklahoma is about. We don't have the details that are going to be needed to facilitate some of the conversations that you're talking about yet, but we will quickly get about the business of putting those together and re-engaging some of that dialogue.
I've got a follow-up.
And Joseph, please.
Real quick, the best source of accurate information for things related to homeowners, to ongoing projects, and this is going to be from now on, and has been in recent past, the best source of that information, the most accurate information is going to be on our website. That's accessoklahoma.com. We are actively updating that. We had intentions of being further along in the design process to this point. As we pick that design back up in the coming months, we will upload both plans, projections, what we anticipate the cost to be, as well as when projects get under construction, we'll provide construction updates that way as well. So our website's going to be the best place for a homeowner, for anybody who's got a question about the program. That's the best place to get accurate real-time information. There's also a 1-800 number and an email address there where you can ask a question directly about a very specific and unique circumstance if somebody has one. Thank you. Sorry.
Following up on the transparency question, total transparency, I'm wondering if that would involve the public attending a public meeting, listening to a public meeting, and getting to hear concerns, questions, and complaints by those affected. It's your choice as to whether or not to let them speak. Why not let them speak?
We've conducted a tremendous amount of public outreach related to Access Oklahoma outside of our board meetings. Our board meetings are business meetings. And again, those proceedings, the Turnpike Authority rarely takes public comment in that context. And they're focused on business proceedings that need to be conducted within the presence of the board. We do invite public comment on occasion, but again, that's rare, and it really is related to the context of the board meetings themselves.
I'm confused. Excuse me, hold on a second. I'm confused. You're saying that it's a business meeting, but it's an open meeting. By that definition, the hundreds of city, county, state agencies around the state, they're doing business, and many of them, hundreds, allow public comment at every meeting. Why not? How does it hurt to let them talk?
Once again, many of the boards and commissions do not have a public comment period on their agenda regularly, just like the Turnpike Authority. And it's up to that entity to determine whether or not they allow public comment.
Right, so you're making that choice. Why? Why not? What's the harm?
In the particular instance that you're talking about, which I believe is today, there was nothing on the board agenda related to the Access Oklahoma program, and nothing that would have predicated an open forum for comment.
Well, but you kind of did talk about Access Oklahoma ultimately.
We did not anticipate that, Mr. Lackmeyer. So,
Okay. But again, I guess I'm not hearing the harm.
well, again, it was a cognizant decision based on the circumstances of the board meeting today.
Okay. Will you allow them to talk at meetings where Access Oklahoma is talked about?
If agenda items that are being presented warrant public comment, and that's a case-by-case decision that we take into account.
And will they be allowed to request to comment on it when the agenda comes out, instead of submitting questions 15 days in advance when there's no agenda to do that?
We will accommodate, as we have in the past, whenever public comment is warranted.
Well, that doesn't answer my question. Will you allow them to request a comment when the agenda comes out so they can see what's on the agenda and request a comment?
We do have consideration of public comment period in accordance with what items are on the agenda, as we have done in the past. If we believe that public comment is warranted based on the items that are on the agenda, we'll certainly include that as appropriate.
So, but will they be required to submit it 15 days before the agenda comes out?
I believe what I'm saying is the Turnpike Authority will invite public comment based on agenda items that are on the agenda that require that type of feedback and input. The challenge that we have with the board meeting is it's not a two-way dialogue. And again, that's something we have to be mindful of. So when there's an agenda item on the board meeting agenda that we believe warrants public comment, the Turnpike Authority will schedule that.
But City Council this morning, they had someone cursing at them and yelling, and they're not able to respond, but they still allow it.
And city councils regularly invite public comment and are a open forum like that for public comment. The Turnpike Authority's board meeting is different. It's a business meeting. And again, if you look at the history of the Turnpike Authority board meeting, there is not a regular public comment open forum. So.
The Supreme Court referenced this morning 30 years of precedent, essentially leading up to the decisions. Are you able to touch on briefly some of those past cases or what established that precedent as you see it?
The validation proceeding that I am familiar with was related to the Driving Forward program, the Turnpike Authority's last development program that brought the widening on the east end of the Turner Turnpike, the Kickapoo Turnpike, and other enhancements. And again, that proceeding was asking the court, again, to look at the bond issuance and the validation of those bonds as related to projects that were identified in statute. That particular case was related to the Kickapoo Turnpike. And again, that proceeding, I think, went as expected. And I think that at the end of the day, the Turnpike Authority has the sole responsibility to determine where the routes go. And again, what we were asking the Supreme Court is, here's our interpretation of the definition of those routes as placed in statute by the legislature, and we're about to sell bonds. Are we right? And that was a ruling that was delivered today. And again, that's part of the regular process.
Would you take it as a victory, not only for the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, but for Oklahoma itself, the fact that you will get to move forward with this project?
I think from the long-term transportation system, we will have a safer highway system with the introduction of these improved facilities. I think that's a given. The growth in Oklahoma, whether you're talking about the metropolitan area of Oklahoma City, metropolitan area of Tulsa, or in some of our major interstate corridors, is not going to slow down. We're going to continue to see that growth. We're going to continue to see the traffic challenges that are associated with that growth materialize on our system. And we've got to act to address it. And that's, the Turnpike Authority is a tool in the transportation toolbox. They can't solve every problem, but they can step in where the Department of Transportation is not resourced to be able to make an investment. And these are investments in the future. I want to emphasize that again. We're looking as best we can 30 years into the future and trying to make sure that we anticipate what's going to happen on the highway system, what the needs will be, and then to make associated improvements. And so we're going to have a better system. Do I consider it a victory? No, I consider it part of the process. And I can't emphasize that enough. The process is important, and this is just part of that process. Questions? Again, very much appreciate your attention this afternoon, and appreciate you for coming and talking to us.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Michael.
Yes, and you.